All right, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining. We're going to keep the DTF train rolling here. This is not a DTF show, by the way. Although the last 3 episodes seem to be DTF centric, it just seems to be the hot topic right now. And some of the responses and questions seems like we just want to keep that rolling. So we'd like to introduce our guest here. We have Lucas Crossley, who's our regional manager in Canada. Lucas, if you don't mind just kind of introducing yourself and maybe talking a little bit about the Mimaki brand for our listeners who are unfamiliar with it, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure, Zach. So my name is Lucas Crossley. I'm the regional manager for Mimaki here in Canada. Been with the company now for almost 10 years, and I've been in the business now for I think about 20 years now. And certainly this should be a fun discussion. My roots actually go back to apparel decoration. Kind of started back in the early 2000s. I think was probably one of the first people in Canada to print on, like really thin 55 micron polyurethane products, and be able to apply them to dark garments and stretch and all that stuff, because we were testing all that back in those days. So certainly have some thoughts and feelings on the direct to film market and how it's really just completely changed the way we do things. Thanks for having me, guys.
Definitely. And Mimaki, you want to talk a little bit about when it started, where it is now, growth we've seen?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you the 30-second elevator speech. Mimaki's a Japanese company. We're actually listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange under Mimaki Engineering, so we are publicly traded. That's our parent company, and then the analogy that I sometimes give to folks here in Canada, or especially in Ontario, is we're sort of like Mimaki USA is kind of like Brewers Retail is to the brewers. So if you know that relationship, essentially they make the beer and then Brewers Retail distributes it. So that's Mimaki USA's business. We're the distribution arm for Mimaki Engineering out of Japan, and we've been in business now since 1977. So we've been around for a really long time. We're publicly traded, and as an engineering company, we employ engineers, right? Chemical engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. All these people come together to build and develop these products that we bring to market. There's a 30-second spiel.
Yeah, and like for me, so hey guys, thanks for joining along. It's really good to see everybody. I love doing this podcast, but for me, when you're speaking about Maki and like how long it's been in the market, how long you guys have been there, for me, being in the large format printing as well, because I have the car wrap side of things, like the business and banners and all that, we've always seen Mimaki be a leader in pretty much, for example, UV printing and now like whiting circulation. How are you guys able to stay ahead in the market? That's changing so quickly, especially now with DTF coming and you guys being the first big manufacturer coming out with the DTF. How are you guys able to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Essentially, what we do is we have a corporate mandate to reinvest a percentage of annual global revenue into research and development. It's a pretty big number. We are a global company. We operate throughout the entire world, and a percentage of all of that revenue goes back into research and development. And one of the things that impressed me with Mimaki early on is that they do exploratory trips where they will travel to different regions, and they'll come out to my technology center here in Canada. They'll go visit our offices in the US, and what they do is they meet with our key dealers. So they meet with all of our dealers that have long-time relationships with us, and they literally will ask them, what should we be making? It's a pretty grassroots way of doing it, but it's highly effective. That's how we started, for example, the JFX 200, which Zach, as you know, has been insanely popular. We've done really well with that platform. It's very stable. It's very reliable. It's at a price point that is, well suited to the market. And it's literally simply just by asking our dealers, hey, what do you see? What do we need?
And then you have your more aggressive dealers like RB Digital. We were pounding on the Mimaki door like 3 years ago saying like, hey, there's something going on here. We're seeing a big shift in the market. You guys got to jump in this. So yeah, I'm sure you guys also get some push too. And you get enough of it coming from different areas of the world. And it's like, all right, guys, I think we got to focus on this and invest some resources.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's one of the things that you see with the Chinese companies. They come up with an idea, they design it, they build it, and then they start selling it the next day. Whereas, Mimaki, you guys have been working on this probably 3 years now, I would assume. That's when we kind of started, pushing it around with you guys and saying, hey, take a look at this tech. But I think that it's the approach that Mimaki takes to really, take a platform. I mean, it's very similar to the CJV in a sense, where you got the frame and whatnot. So you don't have to waste any time on that. It's just like, hey, let's look at some viewing sets. Let's look at adding some technologies. Let's take a look at what people are struggling with the Chinese machines, and how to kind of fix that, and then field test them. So people are always like, brother, Japan, Epson, Japan, Mimaki, Japan. You got all these Japanese players, and everyone's like, where are they? It's because they don't want to tarnish the brand and put something out. They can get it out probably in a month or two, but you guys take the time, put in some big accounts, R&D it, and really put it through its paces before taking it to market. So you give the dealers like ourselves and also our end customers, a seamless integration process. It's been amazing to see how easy it's been to implement the technology. And I think that's a testament to the R&D that Mimaki does as a company.
Yeah, and the partnerships between Mimaki and its dealers. It's a very different proposition for an established business like Mimaki. When we're going to release a product, because we have a reputation in the industry, and our business is built off of that reputation. So we do have to have due diligence when it comes to putting a new product into the marketplace. Unfortunately, with some of the things we see coming in offshore, it's kind of a take the money and run sort of approach, credit that
Totally.
they are quick to recognize trends and quick to be able to develop technology and get it into the marketplace. But there's a massive disconnect between, providing someone with a product, but then also supporting it and making sure that that product kind of has long-term success. And that's where those companies, those offshore companies have really failed people, in my opinion. And I feel bad, look, the old adage, you get what you pay for, it's still true, and unfortunately, we are in a time where there's a lot more economic pressure on people. Things are more expensive than they've ever been. Inflation and interest rates and all these things are having an impact on, families. But at the end of the day, in my personal experience, regardless whether it's business or whatever it is, I typically find that, you're better off to do your research and invest in something that has the ability to support you if you do run into problems, because you can't promise anybody that you're never going to have a problem. But if you have the infrastructure in place to support customers when they do, then that's the expectation, right? Where these other companies that are coming in offshore, it's literally take your money and run sort of thing. And I've always found that, like I said, if you do the research and invest in a product that has a reputation, you're probably going to save more in the long run. Because I think, Zach, and you can probably attest to this, there's been a lot of folks that have taken these machines they brought in out of Asia and literally mothballed them. And, what a waste of money and time and resources, right?
No, I feel like it just goes with the values of the company and the long-term growth of the company. Like, right, in 1976, that's when the company was founded. And now today we're in 2024, where the company's still there and thriving, right? So the values of the company is not to make money today; it's to still make money 10 years down the road. So, which is completely different than those imported machines, where you buy a machine, there's no support, right? And then you get Zach, where they start selling machines. Now you get support from them, but they don't have support from the manufacturer that's overseas, which is crazy for me. That, like, thanks Zach and RB and all these guys, DTF Superstore, that were able to import those machines, and they were like, you know what, we're going to give support to those printers because they need support. So luckily we had people like that. But now with Mimaki coming in, like for us, we bought machines before RB started selling any machine. So we imported our own machines. And Zach was like, Sean, like, you should get some new like DTF machines. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, no chance.
Until Mimaki, Zach was like, hey, Sean, Mimaki came out with a machine. I was like, all right, when can I get my 300?
Yeah,
and the reason why is because I knew that Mimaki has been there for 50 years. So for me, in my mind, I was like, if the machine doesn't work or there's a problem, we're going to have support and they're going to fix it. They're not there to make a quick buck off of me, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you obviously for your business. It's that's a very important thing for us, is that we can develop these relationships where we grow together. And the old saying that I've kind of always had is, it's not really that difficult to sell the first printer to somebody, right? That can be done. You can get that first sale, but getting them to buy their second printer or their third printer, or still be a customer of yours 5 and 10 years down the road, is much more challenging. And like you said, we've been here since the 1970s, and you don't accomplish that kind of taking the money and running, right? So, and I think too, our business model, and I might be jumping ahead here a little bit, so I apologize if I am, but our business model is different. I mean, Zach, you guys use our
Yep.
place on a regular basis, right? We have what we call technology centers. So in Toronto, we have an 11,000 square foot facility that's fully staffed. So I have Mimaki technicians in the building. I have a service manager in the building. I have channel sales reps, and I have a print solution specialist. And then I also have somebody to help, Zach and his team, when they print their POs in and all this kind of stuff. So, but the biggest advantage to having this is we have all the machines in the building, and we have the technical people there to bring you in, do your print samples for you, educate you on the machine and how it works and what you need to know about it. And then not only that, but the classroom we have upstairs we use for training for Zach's technicians, for example. So they come in, they get a full PowerPoint overview of the hardware that they're working on, and then they go downstairs with our technicians, and they grab a screwdriver and start taking stuff apart. So it's a big investment for. I mean, if you're paying rent in Toronto, you know what I mean, right? 11,000 square foot, it's not cheap,
No.
And then I'm fully staffed, right? So it's a significant investment for our company. However, and it's unique. Not everybody does this. There's some pretty big manufacturers that don't have what we have.
They rely on the dealers at times.
They rely on the dealers, which is fine. But we just feel like our approach is a little bit more kind of hand in hand. And it's worked really well for us since we've opened up.
Yeah, there's 2 points that you had kind of touched on. One of them was talking about getting people to buy their second or third machines, a challenge. And we've seen I'm very active in a lot of the Facebook groups, and guys that started with the Chinese, they brought in the first Mimaki, and some of them are up to like 2, 3, 4, 5 machines. I mean, talking to some of the dealers in the States, they got guys who are ready to buy like 6 units, right? So I mean, it's a testament to that. The technology is tried and true. I mean, Lucas, like when we brought these in, I'm like, all right, Lucas, I'm selling a lot of these. We're going to be good, right? You're like, we're going to be good. I'm like, you're sure going to be good? Because I haven't been good for 3 years. Like, I'm telling you, we're going to be good. And it was, and in the beginning, I was like, okay, well, we're not going to put in a ton of them. Let's kind of, and we put them in. And I talked to Tex. I'm like, any problems? Like, no, we're good. I'm like, okay. Week later, any problems? No. And I'm calling up the customers. We're good. Yeah, we're good. Why are you so concerned? I'm like, I'm just checking.
I've had nightmares with the other ones.
Exactly. That's what it comes down to. And the second point that I want to touch on before we jump into more of the specifics of the TXF, you're talking about price point. Now, yes, the machine is more expensive than if you import it from China. However, I'm talking a Chinese printer. However, for dealers, established dealers who are selling the Chinese machines, as you know, you have to bake in a very healthy margin to continue to support it, right? We're not doing hit and runs here. We want to make sure you're successful. So we have to bake in a margin. That being said, Lucas, when we look at what we were selling our Chinese machine for, and then the Mimaki, it was the same. We literally, our 2-head machine, which is the same speed as the single head TXF, more or less, we were selling for the same price. And our 4-head, which is essentially the same speed, more or less, as a 2-head, was in line. So there luckily wasn't sticker shock. We thought that it would probably come in at a much higher price point, but you guys did a very good job in keeping it competitive in the market. And I think that's why it's been one of the reasons why it's been received so quickly. So yeah, that being said, TXF, let's jump into that. As we know, that's the model that everyone's running right now. What were some of the main goals that Mimaki tried to achieve with their TXF series?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main one is one we've been sort of talking about, since we got on the call, and that's just the reliability in the way you're printing. Whenever you jet white ink, there are some challenges associated with that. And, white ink is something that Mimaki has been involved with for a very long time on our EcoSolvent machines, on our UV machines. We've been doing this for a lot of years. And so one of the challenges with white ink is it has particulates in it that can actually settle in your ink lines and settle in your print head and clog, right? If you think of a print head, it's kind of like, it's kind of like a shower head with all these nozzles in it.
Yep.
Once it's clogged, it's not going to function. So that big thing that we looked at, and one of the things that maybe you might not be aware of is that actually, part of Mimaki's portfolio is that we manufacture our own ink. So, and that's really key because we have really significant quality control over the way we make the ink. And so when we're developing, the electronics that are going to tell the piezo how to flex and how to fire, we know the viscosity of the ink because we made it. So we can, really tailor that to actually work really, really well together. And so the big thing that we noticed in the marketplace and, through conversations, with yourself and customers is that, people were constantly trying to clean and do maintenance, and the heads were clogging and they were down and they were frustrated. And there's a lot of, kind of shortcuts that some of these manufacturers were keying. I remember being at a trade show maybe a year and a half ago and walking around and kind of looking at some of the machines, and like they're literally like an open bottle that they're pouring ink into on the back of the machine.
Shaking it up first like crazy.
That is a recipe for disaster, like on any printer. I don't care what kind of technology it is. You have to unscrew a cap and go like this and pour a bottle in, run for the hills, because you're literally opening the bottle and running the risk of introducing contaminants to your ink, right? And those nozzles are tiny. It doesn't take much to clog them up. So what we did was, first of all, we vacuum sealed our ink and degassed it in aluminum packaging. And so, this is some of the stuff that maybe, when you really start looking at it, you start to understand maybe why there's a little bit higher cost to the way you do things. Is it cheaper to take ink and dump it in a bottle with a screw cap on it than it is to vacuum seal it and degas it and put it in an aluminum package? Well, yes, it is.
100%.
But you're going to pay for that when you're underneath the printer trying to clean it and get it going again.
Or swapping out heads for $2,000 a pop.
Or swapping out heads, and you're stressed out because your customer's calling you looking for their order and you can't deliver. So that's one of the key things that we do. So we degas the ink, and what that means is that certain types of ink can actually create a gas which can form bubbles inside of it, or it can get air bubbles in it. And when you get an air bubble going through an ink line, when it hits the print head, guess what happens? No ink comes out. So that's one of the things that we did. And then the second thing we did, which is one of our core technologies, we have this on a lot of our machines. Any machine running white ink, it's called an ink circulation technology. Now, the manufacturers that also have ink circulation, essentially what it is when you do the plumbing and you put the white ink in, there's a pump system that circulates ink through the lines. Now, having an ink circulation system is great, but ours is a little bit different because we actually circulate the ink right into the damper, which is directly above the printhead as well. Most ink circulation systems stop before the damper. So again, that damper could contain some ink in it, and over time it could settle and you could still have clogging issues. So ideally you want it in the damper if you can. So those are kind of the two sort of big things that we did. And I mean, I know you can speak to this. You have this machine and you run it, you're not seeing white dropout like you would see, traditionally in some of these other pieces of technology that were coming in.
Totally.
So those are big points.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first, when we sold the Chinese machines, part of the pitch was, although China will tell you, you could just run these things and walk away, you can't. You have to babysit the machine. Because if you went away for an hour or 2 hours, first of all, the film might bunch up, smash the heads, and you blow all your heads. But if that doesn't happen, you would leave, come back, and have, half the roll banded and have to reprint everything, which is super frustrating and expensive, right? Yeah, so that was one of the things that we really saw them come to market. And we told people this is the first machine you could truly print and walk away, which massively reduces the labor cost, right? That was one of the huge advantages. Touching on your point about the Chinese ink and your ink, you guys have that control. And like you said, the ink manufacturers are not the manufacturers that are making the equipment. And there's a huge disconnect there. It's very often that we would see that the ink manufacturers would all of a sudden have a new ink to offer you, or I'm buying ink direct from a supplier because there's 2, 3, 4, 5 big companies in China that's basically selling it to everybody. But China, for example, would say, without telling you, that's the issue, they would give you a new cyan and black because apparently it was less harsh in the head. We experienced this ourselves, which is great. Awesome. Cool. Thank you for improving the technology. The problem is they don't communicate that to us. They don't communicate that to the equipment supplier. So all of a sudden profiles are off. Customers are getting different prints. So when the OEM manufacturer is controlling the ink and also controlling the equipment, you see a much better, seamless communication, and the entire process is just a lot smoother.
I would add the RIP to that as well.
Yeah,
because that's all, it's all designed to integrate and work together. And depending on your application, I don't think this is so much the case with TXF, but I mean, if you're a well-established print shop and you've got multiple devices and, you're one roll-to-roll printer and one flatbed and, one tabletop UV and they're all different manufacturers, yeah, it might make sense for you to third-party rip that so that you have, a consistent workflow throughout your whole business. But in terms of, the type of client that's probably using TXF, that may not be the case. But what I like about, having, I call that a closed delivery system. You have one manufacturer that's
Yeah.
giving you the printer, the ink, and the rip. So if you have a problem, guess who you talk to? You talk to one
Yeah.
manufacturer. And I think from a customer support point of view, that's a nice way to go. And typically, if we're troubleshooting issues, if there are issues and we troubleshoot, we revert back to our RIP first. And this, Zach, because we work together quite a bit. We start first and go, okay, is everything functioning kind of as it should be? And if it's functioning properly as it should be with our RIP, then we need to take a look at what's happening with the other RIP. But, it's important in the way everything works. I don't know if you guys know how a piezo head works, but essentially there's a small baffle inside or diaphragm inside the print head. And when it receives an electrical charge, it flexes. And when it flexes, it jets ink. And, to have variable dot technology, what you do is you vary the voltage and you vary the flex and change the size of the ink droplet that actually comes out of the machine. And again, this is something that can be calibrated. Our technicians run a specific test and they actually take a look at how these voltage patterns are affecting the droplet size. But yeah, it's interesting. And again, if you have that disconnect, I'm not saying there's going to be problems. There's plenty of companies that do it, but I think having that one closed delivery system with all the three pieces of equipment working together, I think is a little bit easier to implement, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%. And I feel like, well, with that being said, with the enclosed system that you guys are selling, the ink, the rip, and the machine, like for us, like Zach, if I'm not mistaken, we went with the 300 machine, right? Which is the bigger one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went with the 300. The reason why is because we want print speed.
Yeah.
But why did Mimaki make the 150 and the 300? Like for us as a print shop, it's a no-brainer. Pricing difference. You're going to pay these machines off super quickly because of, you don't have to make screens, like just labor costs, right? And there's less downtimes with the Mimaki compared to a Chinese. So how did Mimaki feel there was a market for the 150? Because when I look at it, I was like, I was just going to buy 300 all day.
That'd be difficult for me to speak to because, I wasn't involved with the development of the product,
Or maybe who's the ideal client for the 150?
Well,
right?
Like, ultimately the two machines, the difference is in the production speeds, right?
Yeah.
So, with a 150, you're looking at somewhere around, 220 kind of left chest logos per hour. And then when you get into the 300 series, well, you're sort of doubling that. So realistically, I think that's where you start.
Output.
Is you take a look at what your needs are, and you purchase the equipment kind of based on not just your needs today, but maybe your needs over the next few years. And there's kind of two paths you can go down. You can look at taking a 150 series, excuse me, and adding a second unit if you have space, and having redundancy of having, and the safety and security of having two units, so that if one does go down, needs repair, you have the second unit going. I think really it comes down to just what your needs are in terms of production. Yeah, essentially the way it works is that with the 150 series, we're sharing some of those ink channels for not just the CMYK, but also the white. And then in the 300 series, we have one print head there dedicated specifically for the ink. So that's really the difference between the two.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the types of customers that are buying the 150. Obviously, there's a couple variables that come into play. One is price point. It's not a huge price difference to get 3 times the speed, but that's one of them. I mean, if some people are buying their first machine, it's a new business, they're not sure about the volumes that they're going to have.
Sure.
People, for example, who are not, let's say you're an embroidery shop and you just, you've been outsourcing your screen printing, you're outsourcing your DTG or your DTF. You're like, I just want to do a little bit and we'll see how it goes and I'll add later on. Yep. I mean, if you've outgrown that machine, you're making money. Who cares if you got to buy a second one or upgrade, whatever the case is. Or if you're, someone who just sells t-shirts on Etsy, or Amazon, you're not someone who's printing thousands of shirts for the corporate space, right? So we've definitely seen, and we see that in other platforms too, like, with the Brother, we have the GTX Pro, we got the GTX Pro B, the GTX 600, and and that's the dealer's responsibility to qualify. Like when someone comes to me, I don't just say, you want to go with the TXF 300. I say, okay, tell me about your business. What are your goals? what do you think your volume is going to be now? What do you think it's going to be in 6 months, a year, 2 years from now? And then from there, I can give an educated, recommendation as to the right type of technology. It's not about always go with the biggest machine. We
No,
see
it's
that
not always
in,
be like Sean and want to buy the best
no,
and the biggest one, right?
yeah,
I guess that's just
exactly.
I guess
just a
that's where
Sean
my
thing.
question. Yeah, I guess that's where my question was heading at first, because we're always like, okay, can we buy the LTS? We always want to get the biggest, baddest machine because we're going to outfill that like
Right.
production. But
Yeah.
no, for sure, it makes sense now, and especially I think answering to the market that had Chinese machine too at first. If you go with a 2-head or if you go with a 4-head of like the Chinese, now you get comparable where you have the 1-head or the 2-head Mimaki, right?
Yeah,
So
I think it's really about just vertical integration,
yeah,
kind of trying to be able to have some different offerings there that kind of with customers' different needs, and the way they grow their businesses. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's smart.
Touching on speed, Lucas, because this is something that my customers are always really confused about. So I figured it'd be a good thing for you to touch on. People are like, okay, well, if I can do X amount with the TXF 150, if I put 2 heads, it's supposed to be double. Why is it not double? Because with the Chinese machines, if I have 1 white and 1 CMYK head, and then I get 2 more, I double the speed, right? So can you explain why you get 3 times the speed? This might be a tricky one for you. It's a little technical. 3
Yeah,
times the
yeah,
speed instead of double.
yeah. This would actually be one that I would probably have to defer to somebody else. Zach, I hadn't actually considered that, but I think it's probably got to do with pass counts. So when you're printing, your print head moves from left to
Yep.
right. That's what we call the scan direction, and then your media feed moves forward. We call this the feed direction. So, in some of these machines, when you change the way the nozzles are configured, essentially you've got a whole head of 8. You've got 8 nozzles, or say 8 channels now
Channels.
dedicated to white instead of 4, right? So I think it just has to do with probably needing less pass counts to produce the same resolution. But I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote
Even
me.
for me. So from what I remember, because I remember I asked Kevin, and I think Kevin asked one of the technicians, and to my understanding, and I might like you not be 100% accurate because it's getting a little technical, but from my
Yeah.
understanding, with the single print machine, not all the channels are being used. So I think there's
Uh,
some channels that are not being used. So it's like, let's say it's like you're using 1.5 of the head, and then you add a second one, you're using 1.5. Well, then there's your other half a head, which makes up 3 times
Yep.
the speed. It might be a little bit more technical, so maybe you have to look into that at some point.
well, I think, like you say, what you're doing here is, so I'm just kind of looking at a document here while we're talking. So, it's an 8-channel print head, which we know, right? And so we have black, cyan, white, yellow, white, magenta, and white in the TXF 150. And then when we switch to the 300, we've got a it's completely dedicated to just the white ink. So what we're doing is we're doubling up on our cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, because now we have 2 channels for each of those colors. Make
Definitely.
sense?
And that's
Yep.
Yeah.
definitely, this is just a testament to our users who think that anything here is scripted. Nothing's here scripted. We're on the fly here. All right. Okay, so we talked about some of the features. Another really exciting feature that some of my clients have been interested, especially the sports apparel decorators, is a variable data function technology that you guys have.
Yeah.
Can you touch a little bit on that? To my understanding, it's not new. You guys have had that with the printed vinyl, so it's easy to implement into DTF, I think. But do you mind just touching a little bit on that?
I can explain what it is. I haven't actually had a chance to play with it myself, and this would have been a great event to maybe have Victoria, like who's our product specialist, on to talk about this, because the product specialists have the advantage of actually, they get to go in and run these machines day in and day out. I've used the machine and made some stuff for myself just for fun to see what it's like, and for my kids and stuff like that. But I haven't played variable data. But essentially, what variable data is, what you do is, when your design software, you make your design, and then you use a custom spot color, a shape like a box or a rectangle,
Yeah.
and you name that spot color to correspond with an Excel spreadsheet. And it sounds a little convoluted, but essentially what happens is, then you populate that Excel spreadsheet with, could be text or could even be images, and then you merge the two together. And so what it does is, let's say we had a shirt for Sean, Zach, and Lucas. Well, we have one design file, but in the center we have one box that says, could be customer name, for example, as a spot color, and then a column in our spreadsheet says customer name, and we merge them together, and it'll just
Smart.
it'll create the 3 documents for us essentially. So if you're doing, sporting teams, this is a great example of that type of an application.
So you give the Excel spreadsheet to your client. I'm talking as a printer, right? So you give the Excel spreadsheet to your client for school, whatever sports team, and they can fill it out. They can send that back to you, and then you can just print it out.
And then they can be responsible for the spelling
for the
mistakes.
misprints. I knew it.
That's crazy. That's
imagine, let's say you're doing a whole league, right? You don't have to sit there and create a file and, like Lucas said, proofread every single one. I mean, I know when I printed, I made that mistake. I mean, you're just typing it in, but it's so many names. Eventually, you're gonna find a problem somewhere.
Copy and paste. You copy and paste one letter wrong. Like there's so many ways to make mistakes. This is super. When are we getting our machine, Zach?
Lucas, when are we getting our machine?
Yeah, exactly. Oh man,
Lucas passes it on to the next guy. When are we getting the machine? Yeah, I mean,
more this month.
Yeah. We sold a bunch at the Toronto Imprint Show. I mean, it was I don't know how many exactly, but probably at least 4 or 5.
That's great.
Ton of
That's
interest.
a good show.
So.
That's a nice,
nice
show.
Side note, how's the show? I didn't get to make it. How's the show?
Excellent. Yeah. We did our $40,000 RB Digital
giveaway?
Screen print package giveaway. We had all our suppliers, M&R being the main supplier. It was won by Merch Co., which is a shop in Toronto. He actually bought the floor model Mimaki DTF.
No way.
So awesome. He couldn't wait. Look at Sean's face. Like, no way, that was an option. Well, don't worry, Sean, yours is coming in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had one there. I was going to take it into my showroom and basically, continue printing here. And he's like, look, I need this and I need it now. So let me take this one home. And then if you have a customer that needs to see it, my doors are always open, which he has been. He bought a ton of M&R stuff, and he's been a great showroom for me. So thank you, Jamie Delaney from Merch Co. Appreciate that very much.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for taking the machine.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, Sean.
Well, Sean, you're kind of in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it took me a 5.5-hour drive there, and then I caught snow back, so 9.5 hours coming back home to wrap my car. So it'd be a little bit tough to get all the guys in Toronto to drive out there to see it. So don't take it too offensively. Lucas, any other features before we jump on that Mimaki's done in this machine that are either unique to the space or unique in this printer?
Yeah, for sure. Probably one of the big ones is our again, some of our core technologies, what we call our NCU and our NRC, so our nozzle check system utility, we call it nozzle check utility, and our nozzle recovery system. So this is pretty standard technology across our platform, but essentially what we do is within the machines, there's a little section of the machine that has a light emitter and a light receiver in it. And so what happens is the printhead will pass over this section and it'll jet ink periodically into this, it's like a trough with the emitter on one side and the receiver on the other side. So it's a light beam essentially.
Yep.
And what happens is the machine will then detect if the beam of light actually makes it from the emitter to the receiver. And if it does, then the machine, there are some clogged nozzles. And so what we can do with that is, depending on the print speed and the print mode we use, we can preset some certain conditions to remap and use other nozzles. Now, what's cool in the 300 in particular is, like as you said, we have those the two cyan, 2 magenta, 2 yellow, and 2 black channels in that one printhead. So if channel 1 was missing, a couple of nozzles, we could just substitute with the nozzles from the other channel and continue to print. So what you would do is, in fact,
while it's printing, it's
done while it's printing. So
it's
in
crazy.
fact, what's happening is you're kind of negating the old way of doing it. With other printers that I used to work on, like, and you touched on this earlier, Zach, you press print, you go, you answer the phone, you do some emails, whatever, you come back and you see banding in your print, you're like, oh crap. So then you stop and then you do a test print to check your nozzle condition, realize you have clogged nozzles, probably do a manual cleaning before you do your automated cleanings, and then try to do a test print again and resolve. So what this does is it eliminates that in specific print modes and specific print speeds. And I don't remember exactly what those are for this machine. There are some conditions, and then depending on the printer model, because this is across the range of Mimaki products, those conditions will be different depending on the print head and the number of nozzles and the configuration, whether they're staggered or in line or whatever. So, but it's a very cool technology piece that we have had for a long time. Nozzle check and nozzle recovery is something we've been doing for a long time. And it's just meant to increase the uptime and
less
minimize your
downtime.
downtime and interruptions, essentially. So
See, I
yeah,
didn't know all this, so now
yeah,
I'm just more excited.
oh,
Well,
there
you
you
just
go.
trust me when I sell you something. I say, Sean, you need this, and you're like, all right. You make
I
my.
know.
Whereas some
I know.
customers, they're like, okay, give me the 900 reasons why I should buy this.
Well, next
So-
time I'm gonna have to read the pamphlet and be like, "Hey, Zach, what's the feature on this? Like, why am I buying this machine? You told me it was
Yeah.
good. Like, what? Like, this is insane. The variable data NCU or NRF, that's great. There's just less downtime for your operators, so they can
That's
just
the whole
run more
point.
shirt.
Yeah,
So he can
that's
set
the
the
whole
computer, update more jobs, send more jobs to the printer, cut more sheet.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
a
a
really,
big
really
selling
cool
point.
feature.
I mean, one of the biggest selling points, and this is part of that technology they're talking about, Sean, is that traditionally you would need to be in a temperature and humidity controlled environment.
Yeah.
You know, the other Chinese machines don't have this technology. So if it's not in the perfect space, you're going to get a lot of banding. So we sell, and we still do. I mean, obviously, you don't want to put the Mimaki in the desert, right? I mean, the better,
No.
it's just going to do less cleaning. So it still should be in a temperature and humidity controlled environment. Like we sell these really nice Ikuchi dry humidification systems. These misters are amazing. I used to run them at my print shop, and it's an excellent piece of technology. But if you don't have that with the Chinese machines, game over. Whereas the Mimaki, so even at the trade show that we were just at, right? The Mimaki, we just had that thing printing all day long. No temperature, no humidification control, no mister. And all the other Chinese machines, they're kind of just chilling there, right? And then someone's like, oh, I want to see a print. They're like, no problem. Flush, 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 flush. Okay, we're ready to go. Or they had all these misters around it. You know, they're trying to do everything they can. Whereas the Mimaki, that's part of my pitch. I say, look, it doesn't have to be in the perfect environment. If you have a print shop, you could put it out in the open with the rest of your equipment. You don't have to put it in a little office with tons of misters. Obviously, if you can put it in a cleaner environment, Lucas looked at me like, well, there's a lot of lint flying around, Zach, so it probably shouldn't be next to your auto. But some shops, they don't have a choice, you know? It's hot or it's cold. It can't get too hot. And Lucas, this is actually, we had one client, you know, it was like, his environment was 37 degrees. And he's like, hey, man, the machine's not printing in this environment. And I'm like, well, there's reasons for that. Lucas, you could touch on that. But first of all, no one should be in that environment, number one. But number two, there's a reason why. Mimaki has actually built in technology, which Lucas will touch on, as to why they're not letting you print at that temperature.
Yeah. We actually have a specification. It's a pretty standard specification, but relative humidity and temperature, and then a range at which the machine should be in. And you can find those, like if you go to our website at mimakiusa.com and you're reading about a specific product. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page and you look at the specifications, you'll see that it's also in your literature when you purchase your machine. There's several reasons why humidity and environment are important, and it can relate to everything from profiling to just making sure we're not creating more challenges for the printer than we need. For example, like a really high humidity, a really low humidity level, depending on the type of substrate you're running across the platen and what the platen's made from. You can actually create static as the substrate. It's friction, right? So as it moves across the platen, it could generate static. Now, if it's generating static and the print head's going like this back and forth across the top, those ink droplets are like, we're talking microns, right? They're insanely small and insanely lightweight. So a little bit of a static discharge will cause a number of things to happen. It could cause the ink droplet to land erratically in the wrong place. It could cause the ink to pool on the bottom of the print head and then just drip suddenly onto the surface. Like there's a lot of potential print quality issues that can arise from poorly controlled environments. So you really should pay attention to those specifications and do your best to make sure that the printer's in a suitable environment.
Yeah, I mean, when this issue happened, our service manager, Lucas' service, Mark Noden, shout out Mark, he's a awesome service manager. He actually said that when you go that high, like 36, 37, you're actually the viscosity of the ink can change. So you don't want to jet that through the head because that's going to cause you head problems. Whereas the Chinese machines, you could print that thing in the oven. You're just going to blow the head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I was told, and I thought that was pretty awesome that I had that built-in technology.
And I mean, as a shop owner, like it's been 14 years we've been doing large format, and every distributor has told us like humidity, control your temperature, control that. And when you start, you're like, my temperature's good. I think I'm fine. Because you're small, you don't have that much cash flow, right? So you don't think about these things. But the investment, once you do it and you see the change of like the quality that you print, especially with like large format, And not
Yeah.
just that, but your vinyl that you're printing on, the temperature to where it's controlled, you get
Yep.
so much better quality. So for us, like that's one of the things I wish we would have done sooner. Now, like the whole shop is controlled, humidity, temperature, so it's heated during like winter. Everything is controlled. Um,
Yeah,
but just
it does
making
make
that
a
change, it's massive,
yeah, yeah, it's well
massive.
said, Sean, and it can impact your colors too, your profiling.
Yep.
If you're really color critical and you're doing, Coke red, TD green, whatever, and you have to hit these colors,
Yep.
you know, not only having and creating print profiles is important, but you may need to check them throughout the year as humidity levels, really change. So,
Yep.
yeah, it's actually really, really important to have a suitable environment for the device for sure.
Yeah, just controlling your environment so you control your variable, right? With screen
Yeah.
printing, there's so many variables, same thing. You want to control as much as you can. But like with all these amazing things that a machine does, why isn't Mimaki like why did Mimaki opt not to make any film, powder, or like even the shaker? Why is that not in Mimaki's head or why is it not out yet? Like what's the reason behind that?
I not part of the engineering group that creates the
Yeah.
products and puts them to market, so I can't really answer that question definitively. But I mean, just as someone who's been involved in business for a long time, I would say that in a lot of cases, people stick to what they're good at. There's we're good ink printers and the software and the ink that drives them. So, to try to then go and manufacture film and do that, I just don't know if that's within something that we would want to take
Oh,
on.
and it
I'm
makes sense.
speaking just my own, not on behalf of the
Yeah.
company because I really don't know, but just my own sense on it. Yeah, that's
No,
what
it,
I would
it,
say.
it makes complete sense. And
Yeah.
I think it goes back to like what we talked earlier, where like the quality that the machines are coming out and like the downtime we're able to have is because you guys are so focused with the R&D and everything on the machines, on the printers, and just focusing on that, I think is the goal for Mimaki. And it makes sense. Like the shaker is a pretty simple thing to build. And why would Mimaki spend money engineering, making something that it's like it's running, right? It works. The film, like
Yeah.
if you have a good film, it works. The powder, it works.
Yeah.
And everything that's not working is the printer right now. So now having that solved, I guess you get the right solution. So yeah, no, it makes sense for sure.
Sure,
Yeah.
and I think obviously, I mean, if as you know, the Japanese technology is always going to be more expensive than the Chinese. If they did opt to go with the Japanese shaker, which who knows, they might do in 3, 6, 9, 12 months. I mean, if they see that these Chinese machines are going to be giving them headaches,
Yeah.
which they have been pretty stable, it's going to be a lot more expensive. And again, it just increases the barrier entry for the average person. And touching on the
Oh, for
film,
sure.
Sean, like how many different whites have you tested in the course of your screen printing career? I mean, and you're constantly changing them and trying new things. The same things with film. Some people want a cold peel, some people want a hot peel, some people want single sided, some people want double sided,
Yeah.
some people want a instant hot peel. There's just so many, or some people want a matte finish, some people want a gloss finish. So for Mimaki to like try and cover everyone's bases, we're going to make
No, it
20
doesn't make
films.
sense.
You know what I mean? So
No, for
that's
sure.
another challenge. And
Mhm.
powder's powder. I've tried a bunch of different powders. There's some that are like
They
the
all
really, really
work.
cheap stuff doesn't work, but for the most part, as long as it's decent, you're not cheaping on the powder, seems to be getting pretty decent results. So Lucas, all right, we got a question for you. Don't know if you could
Uh-oh.
answer it, but
All right.
um on the DTF platform, we like what we see right now. Is there anything that you guys are currently working on or already have announced that you guys are going to be putting into the system? Like Sean and I have some ideas of things that we think could be cool. Like when I was pitching it to him, he's like, does it have this, this, this?
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys are working on right now that you're allowed to share? I think I know my answer, but maybe not.
Yeah, to be honest, I actually, to be honest, no, I don't know.
Okay.
We tend to find out when the engineering group is closer to bringing stuff to market. As these are both pretty new products, really. Launched within, was it a year ago in April, I think,
Yep.
at
Yeah.
ISA. So, typical life cycle of a product, you could see this similar technology existing for 5 years before you see kind of any radical changes. But I'm not aware of anything at the moment. That doesn't mean to say that I'm sure the team are working on something, but as to what it is, I couldn't say.
Well, I mean, you were saying earlier, right, that the team goes to the distributors and talks as to what's coming next, now, like all that. So maybe
Mhm.
just send me an email when the team's gonna go
Yeah.
see RB, and I'll jump in. I'll be like, oh, I want Hexa color. I want that. No,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just messing around. I'm just
Duly
messing
yeah,
noted.
around.
I mean, for me, obviously, you could always get more speed, so they might throw
Yeah.
more heads at it. But then
Yeah.
again, you have to weigh out, like you said earlier, do you want to increase, the number of heads, or do you want to duplicate machines? If you're in a small space, you might want a 4-head machine because you can't fit something else, right? I
Yep.
think spot color fluorescence would be cool. You guys have that in some of your other technologies, like your dye sub, right?
Dye
Lucas?
sub, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
we
could be a
do
cool
in
thing.
our dye sublimation applications. Yes, we have
Yeah.
some really unique
Well,
things. Yeah.
That's
Or
interesting.
also, bulk tanks would be cool with obviously still a degassing system, which you also have in some of your models. So
Yep.
you guys have all the stuff you need to continually checking off our checklist. You guys have the tech. So maybe that'll be in the version 2 of the Mimaki TXF
It's
series.
exciting.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I think that we've seen that the industry is intrigued and they like the Mimaki TXF, whether they're listening to our podcast or watching some YouTube videos, or just seeing other shops posting on Instagram or the Facebook forums. It seems to be one of the really trending brands out there right now in the space. But let's say some of our users want to come and get hands-on experience with it, play with the machines, peel it themselves, maybe bring some files. What would you recommend is the best option or options for
Yeah.
them?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, as I said earlier, the way we handle the business in North America is it's divided into regions, both in Canada and the United States and throughout other parts of the world as well. So depending on where you are, the best thing to do would be to go to our website and find the different technology centers and then reach out to those places to ask if you can come in for a product demo. So, for my team here, we're in the Greater Toronto area in Ontario. For those of you who are in the GTA, we're at Highway 7 and Credit Stone is where our location is. You can reach out to your dealer and just let them know, hey, I want to check out the TFX. I want to see it print. I want to print some stuff for myself and take it home and transfer it. We also have some samples available right in the shop that we can give you as well. So you can go home and take your heat press and make a few things and wash it and wear it and step on it and do whatever you got to do it to just kind of see how easy it is to use. So that's what I would do is you go to MimakiUSA.com. And then if you go to, I think it's about, you'll find kind of all the different locations or
I'll
contact
put
us.
the links.
Oh,
I'll
that'd
put
be
the
great,
links.
Sean.
Yeah, I'll put the
So,
links in the description of
and then we
YouTube
can,
and everything.
yeah, and we can set up a proper demonstration. The way we like to do it in Canada is if we're doing a demonstration, we like to partner with the dealer. So we partner up with Zach here in this, and there's that little form we like you to complete so we understand what you want to see, get our artwork and things like that ahead of time so that when you come in, have a coffee with us and see the thing go, it's a nice and smooth process and we don't take any more of your time than you need. So if you want to book one, reach out to Zach and we'll set it up for you.
And now you have
Definitely.
all the language, right? Like, oh, okay, so yeah, this is the one
Yeah.
that does the NCU
Yeah.
and NRS
Yeah.
and yeah, exactly. So since you
Yeah.
listen to the podcast, now you can ask the good questions.
Educated buyer,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sean and I are actually flying down to Long Beach.
Yep.
He's
nice.
going to see what's new tech. I'm going to be there, obviously representing RB Digital with some of my staff and my partner.
What do you mean?
So I know
You're
that's
going as InkPod.
No, InkPod's not paying for my flight, buddy. So that'll be a great place as well. I know at Printing United there was tons of Mimaki dealers, so I think that's going to be a cool spot. Also,
sure.
there's that DTF Expo that we had kind of touched on in our last podcast with Andy from DTF Superstore. So that's February 22nd to 23rd. Sorry, 23rd to 24th. So yeah, it seems like that's another really good spot to kind of see what's going on in the space.
Yeah, and I think I could be wrong, but I think ISA is coming up in April in Florida as well, which will be a big event for us. And Mimaki has an amazing presence at those ISA, SGIA, those big events. We've got a really good presence there, and it's a good opportunity to come in and speak with the segment specialists as well. Because they can talk at a much better knowledge level than I can on the technical side of things.
Very cool.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Amazing. Well, again, thanks for coming on and talking talking shop, talking print machines, talking
Yeah.
whatever. Like we like to talk about business and everything, right? So thank you for taking the time to jump in the podcast. Now, Zach, you know what? Last week I was slacking on we weren't on Apple Music and Amazon, but now we're
That's
everywhere.
true.
So
That's true.
Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, Amazon Music. So everywhere, you know where to find us. Inkpod Podcast. Thanks everybody for joining, and catch you next week.
I'm leveling up here too. I just got a mic. Lee Stewart picked it out for me. He also recommended some. I haven't figured out how to use these yet, so I'm running a Surface Pro for all this. So I got to give RV a call and see if we get a PC. Because
power button.
I have no idea.
Tell them to get you a Mac.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There we go.
Doesn't run. Does the Macs actually? Quick little thing before you take off. Do Macs run on the Mimakis?
You can run. What you can do is on a Mac you can run Windows.
Oh, here we go. So no. Just no.
Yeah, I'm honestly not 100% sure on that. Most people do stuff on Windows.
No. That's why we stick
people
to
who
PC
do the
here.
kind of stuff that I do. Mac is really, really key.
We run Mac here.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, again, thank you very much, Lucas.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Tuning in.
Really appreciate it.
We're looking forward to having everyone here next week. Take care. See ya.
Awesome. Take care, guys. Bye now.